Candidates now placing the blame game, or playing the blame game, I should say, when it comes to who should be held responsible for all this violence at the Trump rallies.
A lot of them come from Bernie Sanders, whether he wants to say it or not. And if he says no, then he's lying.
Trump has got to get on the TV and tell his supporters that violence in the political process in America is not acceptable. End of discussion.
He is trafficking in hate and fear, pitting groups of Americans against one another.
All right, we're getting reaction right now from Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall and CPAC chairman Matt Schlapp. Good to see you guys. I mean, Matt, all this violence, all of a sudden, why is it happening now?
Look, I think there's a lot of people out there that on the left who are targeting Donald Trump, and they're targeting his rallies. They're seeing this spontaneous reaction across the country to people, to the Trump candidacy, and they're exploiting those opportunities. I also think Donald Trump is one of those guys. There are people who love him, and let's face it, there are people who do not. And he's bringing out a lot of passion in American politics. A
lot of passion, but you know, we hadn't seen anything quite like this earlier. Do you blame Chicago at all, Rahm Emanuel, for maybe not having the kind of police force he needed on hand to deal with this? Or is that sort of conspiracy-like thinking? What's your view on that, Matt?
Look, I don't know what is happening in places like Chicago. I do know this. I was a veteran of a couple of Bush presidential campaigns. We always avoided anything near college campuses because from Republican candidates, it's always what you get. So it's just kind of like, it's not a shock if you get near a campus that you're going to get a bunch of campus protesters and other left-wingers who want to cause a scene. So I think maybe it's okay in this day and age to just understand that. And as far as Rahm Emanuel, he needs to control his city, period. He's had a heck of a time doing that.
You know, point taken. Let me go over to Leslie, though, for a moment and just get her thoughts on who this actually is going to help ultimately. I mean, does this help Cruz? Does this help Rubio as we go into a big day tomorrow? Are voters looking at this video, these feeds that are coming into them of what they saw over the weekend in Chicago and saying, maybe I need to rethink whom I vote for?
I don't think looking at what protesters have done, if in fact they're liberal, we're making the assumption everybody's liberal, making the assumption everybody's a Bernie supporter because it's a college campus and maybe because of the demographics. But I think they need to look at what Donald Trump is saying and the response to not only these protests, but response to the protesters and the level of vitriol, increased nasty comments, go back to Auschwitz and other things that have been yelled that we find on video at these Trump rallies. So I do think people are saying, is this an individual that wants to suppress those that were not being violent or physical in their First Amendment right as president? And is this what we want in our nation? We've worked so hard to try and stop division, not just in the Republican Party, but overall in the United States of America going forward. And of course,
really
what does the world think
of this? Is it just there simmering underneath the surface? Donald Trump talking about this anger that's being felt from everyone there in North Carolina today. Watch him here.
The country is so divided, it's incredible. And, you know, it's very sad when you look. There's anger at the fact that America, the United States, it doesn't win anymore.
And he went on to say, you know, there's anger everywhere, our side included, referring to his own supporters there, Matt. So to my point earlier with Leslie, maybe that anger has just kind of always been there. We've sort of tried to push it away. But people are saying, look, you know, I can't take care of my family on this job. I don't have a good financial future. And look at the state our country is in with the likes of ISIS. And it's turning into something that no one likes to see.
Let me be clear how I see this. I don't think this is all inspired by Donald Trump, this whole political movement that we're seeing out there. I think it is a movement that was occurring in the country that Donald Trump saw and got in front of and now is the leader of it. But there is this dynamic across this country from people who worry about America's role in the world. They worry about the fact that you know, what's our economic security going to be? We have the lowest employment participation rate since Jimmy Carter was president. We have genuine angst out there. And the fact that Americans are trying to step up and get involved in politics. I don't like the violence. I hate to see the videos of people taking swings at each other. But let's face it, underneath it all, there's some very serious issues facing this country, and it's becoming very passionate.
I think you're making a good point, saying that, you know, he has capitalized on this moment. Leslie, I'd point out that Bernie Sanders also has capitalized on this moment. When I heard him speaking in that town hall last night, his rhetoric sounded quite Trump-like when he was talking about the anger that people feel about manufacturing jobs that have disappeared.
No question about that. This is an area where both Senator Sanders and Donald Trump actually have very similar messages that resonate especially with blue-collar voters, and that's why we saw Senator Sanders win by a very small, just above 2% margin in the state of Michigan. But the difference here is that Senator Sanders has been very clear that we are not to blame, that immigrants, legal or illegal, are not to blame for the jobs, and quite frankly, Muslims should not be blamed here or throughout the world for terrorism. That's the problem here. I don't disagree with anger. I don't disagree with Matt that it's great to see people step it up and become politically involved and be passionate and become more concerned and get out and vote. I don't disagree with that. But pointing fingers of blame we have seen historically, and not just in Germany, all the way back to Adam and Eve.
See, there you go with that
bring
comparison
down
again.
this
Though.
nation,
I think that, you know, we've heard those comparisons, Matt, you know, of Hitler and Donald Trump. To me, that's going to a place that just you just absolutely shouldn't. It's irresponsible to go to, and I do not understand why people, many members of the media, are trying to make that analogy.
You know, let me just say this. I think I talk to Trump supporters around the country. These are people who love their country. And yes, they're frustrated and they're angst-ridden. And I think it's wrong, and I think Republican candidates who have done this have made a mistake. When they belittle those people, when they belittle their voice, when they say that they're racist or hateful, I think what we're not doing is incorporating them into the conversation about where our future needs to be. And that's the big mistake we're making. Don't cut them out. Bring them in and listen to them. They are legitimate voters. Their voice should be heard.
All right. Leslie, Matt, I'm going to see you guys in a bit. Thank you so much.
Is there anyone on stage, and can I see hands, who is unwilling tonight to pledge your support to the eventual nominee of the Republican Party? Raise your hand now if you won't make that pledge tonight. Mr. Trump.
Whoa, what a difference 6 months makes, huh? That was the first Republican debate hosted by Fox News back in August, where all the candidates, with the exception, I should point out, of Donald Trump, promised to support the Republican nominee no matter who got the nod. But now, that support that they once professed, it's wavering.
I think it is a disaster. I think it's a disaster for Republicans, for conservatives. I think it's a disaster for the country.
I said in the debate when they asked if I would support him, I said yes, but sometimes it's really tough.
Look, I'll be honest with you, it's getting harder every day. I'm not going to change my position today about supporting the nominee because I still believe that Donald Trump will not be the nominee.
But wait a second, didn't they take that pledge? I mean, didn't they promise to support the nominee? Why are they wavering on this right now? This, as the candidates are campaigning hard hours before tomorrow's primaries, including John Kasich. You can see live pictures of him there in his home state of Ohio. He's actually being joined by Mitt Romney on the campaign trail there in Canton, Ohio. Well, Leslie Marshall and Matt Schlapp are back with me. And I guess the question is this going to be fait accompli? If Donald Trump manages to walk away with more delegates tomorrow night, Matt Schlapp, is he going to be the nominee for the Republican Party?
Look, if he wins in Ohio and in Florida, and all the polls in Florida show him with a double-digit lead, in Ohio it looks very tight, and of course we have Illinois and North Carolina and other big states to come. But if he wins Ohio and Florida, it's just almost impossible to imagine a scenario where he doesn't have the minimum number of delegates going into the convention. So I think tomorrow is just a huge day for this campaign.
And Leslie, would you be betting that he's actually going to be the Republican nominee at this point?
Actually, yes. As a matter of fact, Trish, my fellow Dems for a long time now.
I know you're hoping for it.
Donald Trump will be. No, not just I am. Not just hoping for it, but I said, look, when he first ran, people said, oh, it's a joke. He's just getting an ego boost. I said, look, I live in a state where Arnold Schwarzenegger was our governor. This guy could, and I do believe will be the Republican nominee. And I agree with Matt. He gets Florida and Ohio, and I think unstoppable would be the term.
Was that a fair assessment I made when I said, you know, you're kind of hoping for it? I mean, a lot of Democrats, do they want to see Donald Trump win because they think he'd be easier to beat?
Yes. I mean, quite frankly, the polls show, and I know after Michigan, we're all sort of like, well, double-digit lead for Donald in the polls in Florida doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go down like that. But in polls, head-to-head, whether it's Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, and most left and right do believe that Hillary will be the Democratic nominee, but that she has a lead when we take an average of the polls with Trump. And as a matter of fact, it looks like Marco Rubio would be harder for her to beat, and even Ted Cruz would be harder for her to beat than Trump. So
Which
yes,
is why some of the
Democrats
establishment is concerned, and they would like to see the possibility maybe even of a contested convention so they could get someone else in there. But Matt, I just wonder if they're undercounting the ability for Donald Trump to go after the traditional Democratic voter. I'm talking about the blue-collar manufacturing worker that might feel pretty betrayed by the likes of NAFTA and things like TPP, which Hillary Clinton supported while she was Secretary of State. Is that going to come back to haunt her? And does Donald Trump, if he's the nominee, have a shot at these voters?
Yeah, first of all, let's just say any Republicans who are saying that they won't support the eventual nominee if it's Donald Trump, they're doing nothing but helping Hillary Clinton. That is clear. End of statement. Yeah. Second thing is that for those folks who don't believe that Donald Trump is their preferred candidate or they have problems with Donald Trump, I invite them to make lemonade out of their lemons. And the fact is that there's a realignment going on in politics. It's going on the left and it's going on the right. And the fact is Donald Trump is going to put together a unique political coalition. And I think all these polls we're seeing about general election matchups, I would throw them away. I don't think they're that relevant. I think that things are changing so quickly that we're going to have to see how this comes together. I, for one, believe that Ted Cruz or Donald Trump have a chance of winning that general election because I think Hillary Clinton, she is used goods. People are tired of her and they're tired of these scandals.
Yeah, go ahead, Leslie. Shaking your head. No, no, no.
Look,
you're supposed to disagree with me.
I know. But with Hillary, I have to say, she really does have to get to the blue-collar workers. First, as a woman, I get so angry that this woman is blamed for Bill Clinton signing NAFTA into law, which I was against even as a Democrat, even back then in the early 90s. She is not her husband. Although TPP, that's something she has to be specific and clear with. Hey, I was supporting this when I was Secretary of State, maybe because my boss was supporting it. I really don't, and this is why and what I want to do going forward. And she does have to target those blue-collar workers. But we are only seeing approximately 40% of Republicans supporting Donald Trump. In the general election, more people are going to come out who I think many of which are more socially liberal, and I think many of them will
I want to go back to Matt for a moment because he used a term describing Hillary Clinton, used goods. What do you mean by that?
I just mean that, look, we've seen this movie, and we know how it comes out. And the fact is the Clintons believe that there is a separate set of rules for them. Bill Clinton thought that, and I think Hillary Clinton clearly has shown that with her emails and the way she kept her records and everything else. It's like the one thing the American people are tired of is the fact that people in government think that they can play it their own way. They can hide from transparency, and I think those days are over. And Hillary Clinton is somebody who the American people have seen up close and personal, and I don't think they love this person.
Yeah, it's not a nice thing to say, though. Used goods.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, I'll take it back. Let's say this. I think the Clintons' best day in politics was behind them, and I think the American people are looking for somebody fresh and new, and that's why a lot of the heart of the liberals are with Bernie Sanders.
So in other words, you mean she's establishment. That's a nicer way to frame it. We'll say she's the establishment too, okay?
I'm going to take your coaching, okay?
You got it, Matt. Anytime. Thank you so much. Good to have you guys here. All right, don't forget, everybody.